everyone, welcome back to Soul Science with Risa. Super quick video today. Just want to bring a basic kind of layout with the rays in terms of how we start looking at our own ray makeup moving forward. And in the next video I'll talk a bit about what I recommend in terms of going about working out your own rays. Okay? So we're just going to stick with the soul and the personality ray when we explore that. But today we'll just talk about the monad soul personality relationship in its basic essence. Okay, this is very rudimentary. There are sub-rays, and then there's the lesser rays of the personality ray, your mental ray, your astral ray, your physical ray. So we're this intricate symphony of rayological influence. Okay, if you're listening to a piece of music and there's multiple notes playing, there are different tones coming forward, and something's more predominant, let's say, in the melody versus the background chord, and so it's very much like this vibrational symphony when we're considering our own ray makeup. But we're just keeping it real basic. I want to make this as practical as possible moving forward for working out your own rays and just starting to develop a relationship with the rays in general. Okay, so monad, the spirit aspect, the undying God aspect of a person. The soul, that which is another spiritual aspect of the person, which incarnates across many, many lifetimes, and it serves as a bridge from the monad to the personality, which is the matter aspect, third ray aspect. So monad, this is a meta-analysis. Monad, spirit, first ray aspect of the person. Soul, always oriented towards love and the service of humanity and group thinking. It's not about the selfish will of the individual from that place of identification with the body, okay? Loving consciousness. It's the consciousness aspect, which makes it a second ray aspect. Will, purpose, power, first ray, monad. Second ray, love, synthesis, service, soul, second ray aspect. Third ray, personality, the vehicle of the form, the matter aspect through which the intelligent activity, ideally, of the soul, and then eventually the monad, can directly act throughout into the lower three worlds. Okay? So that's one meta-analysis of it. First, second, third ray. Of course, one's personal ray makeup, the soul may be one of any of the 7 rays, as is the case with the personality, though the monad is always rays 1, 2, or 3, the major rays of aspect, not the rays of attribute. Okay? So, even though the soul may be, let's have an example of a first ray soul with a second ray personality, and let's say that personality is expressing the second ray on the love aspect, so it's very much about connecting with others. It's a very lovable or loving temperament from the surface aspect. Okay, let's say the personality is operating like that, and this individual has a first ray soul. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that even though the personality may have a superficial orientation towards love, as we might define it from the typical emotional and personal preference point of view of the personality, if this individual starts to connect to the soul and the soul ray starts permeating and trying to penetrate and like condition the physical vehicle of the personality, then that person may find themselves drawn into radical service to humanity through a first ray means, whether that's leadership or bringing forth a new innovative idea, or even maybe going into solitude or isolation, which can be a bit of a first ray quality sometimes, in terms of connecting to whatever its gift is and bringing forth something to then help humanity with. So even though you're looking at an example with a first ray soul, that first ray soul is still expressing itself ultimately towards the service of humanity, towards love. So that's why the soul, generally speaking, from the meta point of view, is a second ray aspect, you see. Okay? So that's just important, really basic and rudimentary, and probably, self-evident, but it's worth just laying that out. Okay? So that's important to think about moving forward. In terms of the general notion of connecting to the soul, what happens is, I'm just going to draw it on a piece of paper here. This is really, really classy, artistic. Of course, I'm kidding. This is really basic. So this is only one way to conceptualize it. I just find that this is kind of helpful, at least for my mind. So let's say that the central circle is the monad, right? It's the very core of who you are. And the second is the soul. The third is the personality, okay? So when we're working through our personality lives, our identification, which is that which our consciousness knows itself to be or is familiar with, is out here. Trust my ink to run out. Out here on the third. There's a vague scribble there. Anyway, it's basic enough that you can get it. There it is. Pathetic. So that's where the personality consciousness is. So whenever we're talking about mystical openings or expansions or awakenings, there's always some kind of shift of the consciousness. The identification shifts to a different aspect of being. And let's say in this case, it's starting to shift to that awareness of the soul. So usually when people have beginning awakenings, it's an opening of the heart center. There's a connection to the soul through the Sutratma, which is that point of life energy that streams through the heart center. More on that another day. And that's where we have some degree of revelation of consciousness, or love as a cosmic principle, or I am love, or I'm not me, this personality with my preferences and my likes and dislikes and the people and just the people that I care about in terms of my family and my friends and my particular network. I am this epic, greater cosmic principle, blah, 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 blah. This is like starting to have connection to the soul, right? The Christ aspect, all of this kind of thing. So that's that shifting of identification. So it can often be the case when people first come across the teachings, if they've had an awakening, for instance, they may think they are, let's say, a second ray soul because they've had a revelation of the love principle. That might not be the case at all. They could end up being a seventh ray soul or a third ray soul. So the reason why they might think that they're a second ray soul is because they're literally having a revelation of love, which is a second ray aspect, okay? But what we find is that as we shift identification, as that new energy starts coming through and the soul starts to interact with the personality more and more, and a whole bunch of things can happen. We start burning off karma. There's certain lessons that we go through. There can be a speeding up process. We go through whatever we need to go through, and at a certain point, enough of the identification with the personality is burnt out through certain lessons and karmic patterns, etc., where there's enough space in the person's vehicle to begin to sense much more subtly the quality of the soul. So this is why you don't want to rush into making any assessments about what your rays are, because, and even with the heart awakening, for instance, sometimes that can be a really forceful and penetrative experience for people, and they might read the teachings and go, oh, I must be a first ray soul. Yeah. Or you're just having that blasting open of that sutratmic pathway, and it's this massive radical streaming or dumping through of energy. And for some more extreme cases of awakening, the monad actually comes online to like thrust the soul into the personality. So, which can feel like a very first rate aspect, because the monad as the spirit principle is deeply penetrative. So, again, when we talk about this symphony, it's not just our own makeup that's interesting, but we also have different rayological kind of orientations that are going on within these various different processes of awakenings and blah, 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 okay? So that's important to consider. I think when I first was going through my awakening and I was just beginning to, I came across the teachings and I was like hearing a little bit here and there, I thought, oh, I must be a sixth ray, because it was all about that mystical Neptunian opening at the time. And then after a little while I went, oh, hold on, that can't be right. So there are certain processes that we can go through which have a certain rayological quality, and that doesn't even go into the transits that are going on at the time within the person's natal chart. You could be going through a significant Neptunian aspect, and that's why the sixth ray or the mystical is opening. Okay, so all of this is to say that it is a very subtle science, and it requires deep contemplation, staying open, not getting fixated on any particular idea about what you are, and really getting intimate with the rays and making enough space in your own process to try and figure out with relative accuracy, like, is there enough, how much of the soul is being lived out in my life? And you can start judging that based on what your living life is looking like, what kind of relationships or vocation you're in, and what your inner experience of those things are. So it starts getting a bit more psychological at that point. So yeah, just something to keep in mind with knowing the rays going forward. So yeah, it's just this, generally coming back to this, it's the shifting of identification into that cosmic principle. And the more we do that, we build relationship with that across time. And it moves from a mystical opening or experience of unity, and over time it moves into the occult discipleship way of operating, which is much more scientific. It's said in the teachings that the mystic path eventually has to lead to the occult path, and that makes sense, of course, because the mystic is that visceral experience of beginning to merge with the soul, the personality going through its renunciation, the giving up of its personal selfishness or whatever its desires are for itself, etc. And it's making space for that greater principle of service. Make space for the soul. And so across time, then we work out all these different subtleties, and it's a very nitpicky work. It takes time, it takes reflection. It's as much as we can use all this language and it sounds very epic and cosmic realization and God and divinity and the soul and metaphysics and the occult and all of this, it's really a very humbling, basic, grindy kind of work, and it just takes time and presence and commitment and humility. So in summary, when we're considering the soul ray moving forward, it's that aspect of consciousness. It's like a layer deeper, and it can have a completely different mode of operating to what is considered normal or the baseline place of comfort of the personality. And in the beginning, there's often just a sensing, a glimmer of one's purpose or a potential different way of living. And across time, the more we develop relationship with the soul, and this is, by the way, a process that happens over lifetimes, okay? So there's that whole other thing of going a level abstract, many levels more abstract, broader, bigger, and going way out of our personal experience, even within this incarnation. This is a massive evolutionary process that goes on, that takes time. So we're building that relationship with the soul. We make space for it in our lives, and we can begin to start touching it, and of course using the natal chart, which we're going to look at in the next video, to really help guide and refine our awareness of the rays, and also how the mode through which our soul is trying to express itself in this particular life. So even if we're unsure of the soul ray, we can use the chart to work out some of the major rays that this particular personality, and then what the soul is also attempting to utilize in terms of its main rays of expression, because then that's another thing. The soul has a ray, and that'll express in the chart through the other rays, right? Again, very intricate. So we can really utilize the chart as a baseline to begin to familiarize ourselves and use that as a blueprint for learning about ourselves and what our personalities are here, how they operate, and also what our souls are here to do, and how we can start to build the bridge and go about it a bit more efficiently and directly and responsibly. Okay, so very quick one today. I'll see you in the next one.